The zombie apocalypse began when an unknown virus spread. Social order quickly collapsed as zombies overran the city and other metropolitan areas. Amid the chaos, one man could only complain about how weak he was, as weak as an ant. Regret consumed him. He wished he had the strength to protect his family. Maybe then, just maybe, he would have had the chance to confess his feelings to her. But that dream would never come true, because he was now zombie food. Or so it seemed. Fate had other plans. He becomes the first zombie to fully awaken with his consciousness still intact. We cut to the protagonist, a straight-A college student who has just been diagnosed with stage 3 brain cancer. What a way to start the story. Sweating, he worriedly asks if it can be cured. The doctor doesn't say much in response, only making him realize the gravity of the situation. In other words, he is practically marked for death. Shifting to him outside the hospital. He lies to the person on the other end of the call, saying the diagnosis only shows he has low blood sugar. Let me take this opportunity to formally introduce our protagonist, Woo Cheong. Using the rain to cover his tears, he listens as his family expresses their concern for him. They eagerly anticipate his return, planning to get all sorts of things to celebrate. Woo Cheong replies simply. After all, he doesn't know how to tell them the bad news. After exchanging a few words and goodbyes, he hangs up. Unable to contain his frustration, he curses out loudly. He breaks down, wondering why, of all the people in the world, it just had to be him suffering. Now we shift to Woo Cheong's parents, currently at the shopping district. It has also begun to rain. Apparently, they're done with shopping. As they head home, a familiar figure recognizes them. He strolls over, offering shelter from the rain and treating them to a meal. Father Cheong doesn't support the idea, especially the part about being treated to a meal. The man thinks it's outrageous. He concludes that his friend doesn't know how to fully enjoy life. With that, he returns to his meal, complimenting the dish. Strangely, his blood vessels begin to pulse, unnoticed. We shift to the shop owner, handling a poor otter. His wife notes that business has been great lately, which has resulted in distraction. The otter, using the last of its strength, bites the man. The owner can only curse the damn animal. It's also evident that he doesn't know proper hygiene, as he instantly stops the bleeding by sucking on the wound. Meanwhile, we shift to Woo Cheong, unaware that he is having a nosebleed on his way back home. A girl, Shin-le, tends to him, teasing, asking if he is having perverted thoughts. As she continues to tease, Woo Cheong insists he can handle things on his own. Mentally, he wishes it had been a nosebleed from perverted things. And if he didn't have terminal brain cancer, he might have just confessed his feelings, since they're already evident. As they board the bus, a blonde-haired guy with glasses rudely tells Woo Cheong to move aside. Before he can respond, he's already on the ground. Apparently, this happens every time he heads home. Shin-le furiously confronts the guy. But a bystander chimes in, insisting their young master, Li Tianqi, was just defending himself. This only increases her irritation and disgust toward Li Tianqi, especially when he offers to date her. But the guy isn't in a hurry. Sooner or later, she will be his. Meanwhile, Woo Cheong can only lament his frustration. Being sick has made him a continuous victim of bullying. But this time, he has reached his breaking point. At the same time, Li Tianqi notices a hostile intent directed toward him. He senses that it's coming from Woo Cheong. Bro has finally had enough. Furious, Li Tianqi grabs him. He wonders aloud when the sucker grew the nerve to fight back. Seeing his jab being ignored only makes his veins pulse visibly. Then, he furiously shoves Woo Cheong to the ground, making Shin-le anxious. At the same time, Woo Cheong's phone breaks. Before we proceed, let's shift to a hospital in the city. News reports warn that victims have been hospitalized after consuming a strange meat. Meanwhile, his parents can't get through to their boy. Just then, they are interrupted by a scream from the other side. It's the man from the restaurant, going into a frenzy, repeating the words, "He needs meat like a man." Both parents are worried, asking if the doctors have found a remedy. In response, the doctor shows a confused expression. Even some patients have started biting people. Father Cheung stands as if struck by lightning at the doctor's statement. The next scene takes us to a furious crowd gathered in front of the restaurant. Fuming, they demand an explanation, insisting the owner open up. One man, wielding a sledgehammer, has waited long enough. Without hesitation, he smashes his way inside. The moment they step in, they are greeted by a swarm of flies. The restaurant is a complete disaster. Tables overturned, food rotting. And accompanying the flies is a foul, stomach-churning stench. Before long, a disturbing crunching and chewing sound fills the air. Curious, the man with the sledgehammer cautiously approaches the noise. What he finds sends a chill down his spine. His horrified scream pierces the air, echoing louder than any he'd ever heard before. Before them, the restaurant owner is enjoying his wife's lifeless body. Cut to a speeding bus on the highway. Inside, Li Tianqi, mounting Chu Qiong, is seething with rage over earlier events. His crush attempts to intervene, but his lackeys block her path. Fed up, she makes her move. With swift precision, she grabs one of them by the wrist, expertly putting the fool in a hold, forcing him to plead for mercy. Annoyed by the commotion, the driver threatens to stop the bus. In response, one of Li Tianqi's lackeys flips him off, clapping back furiously. This distraction proves costly. He fails to notice the body that slams onto the windshield. Panic grips him. He presses hard on the brakes, bringing the bus to a sudden halt, rocking everyone inside. Stepping out cautiously, the driver finds only a blood stain, smeared across the windshield. Li Tianqi lackey, frustrated, watches as the driver struggles to comprehend what just happened. Meanwhile, Li Tianqi remains fixated on the windshield, puzzled by the eerie sight. Seizing the moment, Chu Qiong suddenly slaps him across the face. Li Tianqi looks stunned. Chu Qiong, bruised and barely able to breathe. A wicked smirk crawls across Li Tianqi's face, his anger reaching its peak. He grabs Chu Qiong by the hair, slamming his head against the window, mocking his weakness. His crush, panicking, begs him to stop. But despite having won the fight, Li Tianqi refuses to back down, intending to teach Chu Qiong a proper way to slap someone. Suddenly, a grotesque hand appears against the window. The sight makes Li Tianqi freeze mid-action. It's a zombie. Their blood runs cold as a shiver runs down everyone's spine. The bus driver was still outside, trying to assess the situation. Unfortunately, a zombie spotted him, its wide grin resembling that of a one eyeing a juicy chicken. Wasting no time, it launched itself forward. The driver let out a blood-curdling scream as the zombie sank its teeth into him. Inside the bus, panic spread like wildfire. Among them, Li Tianqi wasted no time. He lunges for the wheel and slams his foot on the gas pedal. The engine roars to life as the vehicle surged forward. The sickening sound of skulls and bones cracking echoed through the air as both the driver and the zombie met their gruesome end. Moments later, Li Tianqi checks the side mirror, relieved that they had escaped. Yet his mind struggled to process the nightmare unfolding before him. His lackey's sudden warning snapped him back to reality. A zombie had already reached the bus, its grotesque form smashing through the windshield. Its disgusting, slimy tongue darted forward, inches away from Li Tianqi's face. Without hesitation, he jerked the steering wheel, channeling his inner Vin Diesel in an attempt to shake off the relentless creature. The bus swerved violently, but the zombie refused to let go, gripping the shattered windshield with unnatural strength. It stretched its limbs, preparing to strike. This time, death was certain, one less trash character in this chaotic manhwa. But then, the zombie was forcefully thrown out. Li Tianqi, petrified by the event, turned around. Qingla stood there, her weapon still raised, instructing him to focus on driving. While the group remained on edge, Chu Qiong anxiously checked his phone. Cracks ran across its screen. It was broken. His heart sank as he whispered a silent prayer for the safety of his family. Not long after, they arrived at their supposed safe haven. The place was eerily empty. A thick fog cloaked the streets, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. Qinglu instinctively clung to Wu Qiong's arm, her unease evident. Suddenly, One of Li Tianqi's lackeys pointed toward a distant building. There were people inside. But what caught their attention next sent a jolt through one of the survivors. Standing among them was a familiar figure, his mother. Without hesitation, he bolted forward. Li Tianqi called after him, but it was too late. Bro had already reached the woman, apologizing profusely, expressing his overwhelming relief that she was safe. But the response he received was far from comforting. A grotesque growl. His mother was no longer human. Even worse, the entire building was infested with zombies. He had walked straight into a nest. His mom wastes no time showing her love, followed by another zombie. As his scream echoes, the other students make a beeline for the safe zone. Qingli urges Wu Qiong to move, helping him along. But before they can react, a zombie crashes into them, separating the two in the process. Qiong is sent flying backward, slamming into the car behind him. Suddenly, his crush pulls out her weapon, no hesitation, no fear. This one doesn't mess around. She'll chop anything that stands in her way to pieces. Still trying to catch his breath, he watches as she handles the zombie with calculated precision. But something else catches his attention. He spots his parents' car. Moving cautiously, he approaches, making sure to avoid the zombie's gaze. The door is open. He doesn't understand why. Still processing the shock, he calls out for his parents, only to find the car empty. Peering inside, he finds the car empty, but then his eyes land on a phone. Picking it up, he checks the screen. It's a direct message from his dad. The last message makes his blood run cold. Tears well up involuntarily. As frustration takes hold, he lets out a cry of anguish. That's when a small hand reaches toward him. He freezes. Turning, he finds his little sister staring up at him with tear-filled eyes. Softly, she calls his name. Wu Qiong wastes no time embracing her as she stammers out an explanation, her sobs making it difficult to speak. An apology escapes him as he chokes on her words. Before she can respond, a zombie suddenly lunges at them, interrupting the moment. But before it can do any harm, it's struck down, easily dispatched with a single thrust from Qingli. Qiong's eyes widen in awe. At this point, she might as well be the protagonist of the apocalypse, the reincarnation of a sword maiden. She calls out to them, urging them to move. They dash for safety. Qiong struggles to keep up, his body weakening, while the group inside desperately tries to shut the gate. His crush sees him faltering and, without hesitation, gives him a push. Just in time, the gate slams shut behind them. Li Tianqi notices them, his expression tense. He clearly didn't expect to see Wu Qiong here. Regardless, he takes initiative, pointing toward a news report. The footage shows people going into a frenzy, strange and unsettling. Then he shifts the conversation. The zombies outside. The food market nearby. Someone needs to lure them away. It's a fool's errand. No one wants to take the risk, but if nobody does, they'll all die. Then Tianqi has an idea. A bold and reckless one. He grabs Chu Qiong's little sister, suggesting they use her as bait. This fool is asking for death. Qingli furiously roars at the absurdity of the idea, but he reasons that the bait needs to be light enough to be thrown, an even more ridiculous thought. The little one desperately calls for Wu Qiong just as he dashes toward Li Tianqi, demanding that he let her go. But the fool only laughs, mocking him as if he's in any position to negotiate. A brutal kick follows, and Li Tianqi suggests they die together. Wu Qiong is sent crashing to the ground, and Li Tianqi instantly becomes alert. Qingli, annoyed beyond reason, strikes which he blocks. Enraged, he makes it clear that protecting Wu Qiong so persistently only infuriates him. She fires back with sharp words, calling his reasoning a load of crap. Now, he decides to handle her more seriously. He presses harder, wondering if she will still have the nerve to talk when he is done. Meanwhile, Li Tianqi's lackeys are in the process of tossing the little one outside as she continuously calls for her brother. Other students grow sick at the sight, but they know better than to intervene. Helping Wu Qiong is a death sentence. Wu Qiong lies on the ground, lost in thought. The medical report says he needs to be hospitalized immediately, But remembering his family before the incident, tears well up. Why should he lose everything? Even worse, he doesn't even have the strength to fight back. The lackeys are close to opening the gate and tossing his sister out, forcing him to yell furiously. His voice cuts through the chaos, successfully grabbing their attention. Even Qingli is stunned for a moment. Wu Qiong is unable to stand, but he is fixated on protecting his little sister. Without hesitation, he volunteers himself to be used as bait to lure the zombies away. The little one protests, but he gently assures her, promising to return safely, and maybe, if he's lucky, he could find their parents. But she refuses to be swayed. She has witnessed firsthand what the zombies can do. Wu Qiong has no choice but to hand her to the only person he trusts. His crush doesn't want him to sacrifice himself either. Moved by the moment, he embraces them both, thanking Qingli for everything. She stands momentarily stunned. This is his final goodbye. And with that, he walks away without looking back. The little one cries out in protest, her voice raw with desperation. When one of the lackeys pressures Wu Qiong to get moving, Li Tianxi signals for the fool to be silent. He hadn't expected the guy he bullied to be this decisive. Just before going, the two lock eyes in an intense stare. Li Tianxi opens the gate. Wu Qiong steps forward, slow and deliberate. Suddenly, his crush tosses her weapon. He catches it, now forced to face the overwhelming horde of zombies. Meanwhile, she inwardly prays that our boy survives in one piece. Yes, I said it. The one piece is real. We shift to our boy, holding his own against the horde. He lashes at one zombie and bolts off as he spots an opportunity. Looking through the chasing horde, his irritation toward the apocalypse only grows. His eyes land on another zombie. He prepares to end it with a single strike. But as the zombie tilts its head, recognition dawns on him. It's his father, now turned into a zombie. He struggles to process what's happening, but his undead father seizes Wu Qiong's moment of distraction and lunges at him. Tears involuntarily well up in his eyes. He doesn't understand. His family was innocent. They turning into zombie is heartbreaking. Just then, another figure launches toward him, his mother. She is focused solely on devouring his flesh. Wu Qiong grits his teeth in frustration. Rather than resenting his parents, he pulls them into an embrace. Next, he lets out his frustration. Before he can say anything, a hand reaches toward him. And just like that, he loses sight in one eye. Meanwhile, Qingli and his sister watch the entire thing unfold in 4K. As our boy is sent to the next life, Qingli tears up, calling his name repeatedly. Time passes. Scavengers circle the sky, seeking to claim dead bodies as a reward. One suddenly makes the worst choice. It heads straight for Wu Qiong, slowly approaching his face, particularly his eye. However, the bird is grabbed in a swift motion. Wu Qiong's eye opens slowly. As he rises, out of nowhere, he bites down on the poor bird, letting it taste its own medicine. But something is wrong. The taste is off. He vomits it up. The sight puzzles the zombies. What kind of zombie rejects fresh meat? Obviously, the protagonist type of zombie. Meanwhile, our boy stands up. For some reason, his hair is now longer. Yet, his mind lingers on what happened to him. He looks up slowly. Noticing the change in his eyes, he realizes he can stare directly at the sun, its light no longer blinding. His irises have turned a strange shade of gray. But he doesn't dwell on it. His attention shifts to the zombie before him. Reality crashes down on him. He remembers everything. Strangely, he is still alive. He can move freely. Is he truly alive? The memories flood back. The agonizing bites from his parents, each one searing through his skin. Yet, despite everything, he is still standing. Something nags at the edges of his mind, something he is forgetting. Then, it hits him. His crush and his little sister. Without hesitation, he dashes forward, racing toward the last place he saw them, the store. But as soon as he arrives, his heart drops. The place is a mess. Shelves topple over, shattered glass litters the floor. It is clear the zombies have broken in. Fear claws at him. He calls out desperately, his voice echoing through the destruction. Then, a sound, munching. It's a chubby zombie. Clearly, this one loved meat before death. Even after, their hunger never fades. Woo Cheong's eyes widen, dread creeping in. Suddenly, a zombie lunges out of nowhere, sinking its teeth into his leg. But he feels nothing. Instead, his focus locks onto the chubby zombie. The creature turns towards him, gnawing on something soaked in blood. It's a band. Rage surges within him. Knowing it belongs to Qingla. Without thinking, he lunges at the zombie. He strikes with full force. Also, the zombie's teeth shatter upon impact. He roars, anger, grief, and fear colliding all at once. The zombie simply growls in response, indifferent to his fury. Woo Cheong clenches his teeth so hard and blood came from his eyes. Yes, bro literally cried blood. Then, he crushes the zombie. Resentment burns in his veins. Fueled by rage, he launches himself forward, obliterating the zombie's mouth. He rips the blood-soaked band from the zombie, his breath coming in sharp, heavy gasps. That's when the realization strikes him. He has just killed a zombie. But something else catches his attention. He turns his gaze, moving toward it cautiously. What he finds surprises him. It is one of Li Tianqi's lackeys curled up, terrified out of his wits. Curious, Woo Cheong reaches out. But the man recoils, his voice trembling, calling him a monster. Confused, Woo Cheong furrows his brow. Before he can process it, the commotion has already drawn more attention. Zombies stir, their decayed forms toppling the remaining shelves. The lackey panics. Woo Cheong remains frozen. Then, instinct takes over. He ends the first zombie with a single strike. His body count rises to 2. But as he stands there, dazed, the man's fearful gaze never wavers. Still calling him a zombie, Woo Cheong's confusion deepens. He saved this man, so why is he being accused of something so monstrous? Before he could squeeze out any information, a zombie lunge, biting the fool on the neck. Woo Cheong stands still, momentarily stunned. Then he moves. He steps forward, his attention shifting to a pool of liquid on the ground. Something inside him urges him to look. He crouches, peering down. As his reflection stares back at him, disbelief washes over him. He mutters, barely above a whisper, the last words of the lackey. First, he had brain cancer. Then, he got eaten and died. Obviously, he hadn't planned to survive the apocalypse. Just as he began to gather his thoughts, lightning cracked outside. He turned into a zombie, watching the zombie feasting on Li Tianqi's lackey. Despair overwhelmed him as he realized he was still alive. He is now the walking dead. A scream echoed from inside the store. Woo Cheong clutched his head as if having a mental breakdown. Next, a flying rod came into view. It struck Woo Cheong at the back of his head, knocking him unconscious. At the same time, a group approached. One person complimented the strike, while another stared in awe at the noisy zombie. As one of them dealt with the other zombie still feasting, Woo Cheong's legs were tightly bound by another person. A silver-haired guy marveled at Woo Cheong's emotions as a zombie, thinking he must have been very annoyed when he was human. His partner, however, began dragging Woo Cheong outside. Woo Cheong was placed among other zombies and strapped to a minibus. With that done, it was time to leave. As the bus sped up, Woo Cheong's unconscious body was dragged along the road. His mind drifted elsewhere. The scene shifted to him waking up to something that smelled good. Getting out of bed, he headed straight to the source while calling for his parents. Strangely, he found no one, just a boiling pot that left him puzzled. Curious, he approached the pot. The contents were meat. Fiercely, he swallowed hard. Unknowingly, he stretched out his hand, grabbing the boiling meat without flinching. Holding it in his hand, he wasted no time devouring it. At that moment, a figure called out to him, curious. Qinglu appeared, a horrified expression on his face, calling him a zombie. Woo Cheong didn't understand. He was just eating cooked meat. But when he regained his senses, he broke into a cold sweat. He discovered the horrifying truth. What he had been devouring was his little sister. Falling into despair, he let out an ear-piercing scream. Then, abruptly, he woke up. He called out his sister's name in panic. Thankfully, it's just a dream. The people holding cooking tools and vegetables were stunned. Even Wu Qiong himself was confused. They panicked, screaming that he was alive. Wu Qiong, still processing what was happening, wondered where he was. He started by looking around, finding himself in a boiling bath. Looking at the contents in which he was soaked, he understood. They were ingredients. They were cooking him. Then, he suddenly looked up abruptly after hearing a growl. He was shocked to see zombies hanging livestock in a cold room. Panicking, he wondered what was happening and where he was. Changing scene, the silver-haired guy receives an inhaler. His expression is unreadable as his subordinate roars in annoyance at the absurd reward. However, the man dressed like a pimp and the doctor scoff. After all, they risked their lives to get medical supplies, which are scarce in the apocalypse. With a wicked grin, the pimp offers another twisted proposal, insisting they must bring him 20 zombies for a single bottle of medicine. Even though they're going too far, the doctor suggests the silver-haired guy reconsider the offer. In response, the silver-haired guy throws a jab, calling the pimp a cunt, which instantly irritates the man. But he doesn't care. He gently approaches the guy with a pipe. The silver-haired guy agrees to the offer, but he can't stand people like the pimp, profiting off others' sweat and struggle. Just as the pimp is about to argue, he is greeted with a home run swing from the pipe. His subordinates are startled, calling his name as the atmosphere turns tense. The pimp clutches his bleeding head while cursing. Irritated, he lunges at the silver-haired guy. The guy simply dodges the strike like it's in slow motion, then grabs the fool's arm, shoving him hard to the ground. Seeming to have blood in his eyes, the silver-haired guy prepares to strike again, this time making sure the fool is out of commission. His people are terrified by the sight. Unfazed, he complains about his asthma acting up because of the fool. Bro is really surviving the apocalypse with asthma. Afterwards, he decides to wrap things up with the crew. The guys, bursting with anger, charge forward with weapons, only to be splashed by a yellow liquid. After taking a sniff, one of them realizes it's gasoline. The silver-haired guy sneers, calling them fools for thinking they only headed out to catch zombies. He reveals a wicked expression as he brings a lit match close to the desperate men, who begin to plead for their lives. Just then, another subordinate rushes in with urgent news. They all show puzzled expressions. He is shoved aside with great force before he can say anything. The silver-haired guy is in disbelief. Wu Qiong is casually standing there, asking if he's the boss. Instantly, the silver-haired guy becomes alert, understanding Wu Qiong is a zombie. He also remembers, this was the one he captured at the convenience store. Accidentally, he drops the lit match, stunning both him and Wu Qiong in the process. However, just before the match lands on the ground, Wu Qiong acts quickly. In a whoosh, he moves as fast as Barry Allen, leaving the silver-haired guy stunned in surprise. Grabbing the match midair, he turns to the guy and demands answers. First, Wu Qiong wants to know what exactly is happening here. The silver-haired guy doesn't respond. He panics, realizing Wu Qiong is a special case. Meanwhile, Wu Qiong shows a puzzled expression. He is caught off guard as the silver-haired guy attacks, intending to crush his skull with one strike. But Wu Qiong immediately stops the strike, even crushing the pipe with little to no effort. As the tension tightens, the silver-haired guy falls into despair. He is going to die. Suddenly, the pipe is tossed to the ground. The group calls out to the silver-haired guy in confusion. Both of them exchange sharp gazes, the atmosphere growing more tense. Wu Qiong didn't intend to harm the guy, but he is stunned when the man drops to the ground before he can make his intentions clear. The guy begins counting down an apology, making Wu Qiong even more bewildered. Sensing a plot, he steps back, but the silver-haired guy continues to apologize, even grabbing his leg and pleading for forgiveness. His entire crew is speechless, seeing their boss act like a coward. Meanwhile, Wu Qiong feels totally awkward. Still, he turns to them, stressing the need to talk. However, The pimp group shows a frightened expression. Nonetheless, the scene shifts to some time later, as Woo Cheong recounts the events leading up to the current moment. The group struggles to wrap their heads around his story. Naturally, anyone bitten by a zombie turns into one, not to mention that a zombie retaining its memory sounds almost absurd. The silver-haired guy chimes in, moved by Woo Cheong's account, especially the fact that he turned into a zombie to save his crush and little sister. But he notes a flaw in the story. Zombies don't eat the whole body. Woo Cheong is surprised to hear this. So he continues, explaining that he believes the absence of his little sister and Ching Li's bodies means they must have escaped, or worse, they have already turned into zombie. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to another group at the hot bath, or a hot pot, you get the point. They notice the zombies acting up but hesitate to inform their boss. Just then, the rope binding one of the zombies snaps, causing it to fall straight to the ground. The zombie growls as it is roasted like barbecue. The smell makes the guys drool, thinking that it actually smells good. Woo Cheong also catches the scent of roasting zombies. This prompts him to leave, as the silver-haired guy asks where he is going. Inwardly, Woo Cheong knows he cannot stay with these zombie eaters, so he intends to find his loved ones. Now, the guy throws a jab, wondering if Woo Cheong even knows what's happening out there. It seems a lot has changed and we are also in the dark. So he proposes to be his guide, leaving Woo Cheong stunned. However, his subordinates aren't on the same page, making the silver-haired guy click his tongue in irritation. Just then, Woo Cheong surprises him by recalling that he is the one who knocked him out. Even though it isn't clear why he was captured, Woo Cheong doesn't trust them and wants nothing to do with them. Furious, the guy turns to the fool who spoke up earlier. Extremely upset, he wonders if the guy wishes to die. Enraged, he kicks the man, sending him flying. The guy clutches his stomach, arguing that Woo Cheong is a zombie. Another, sweating bullets, agrees, thinking it would be too dangerous to have him around. One thing is certain, the guys are all idiots. After all, they are in an apocalypse. Was anything truly safe? Anyone with more than 2 brain cells can tell Woo Cheong isn't a normal zombie, and people will consider him the best possible ally in this nightmare. We shift to Woo Cheong, hearing crunching sounds from the room he first woke up. Curious, he opens the door, only to be shocked in the next moment. The guys are literally eating zombies. At the same time, one of them spots him, launching straight at him before he can recover from the shock. Soon, the zombie fragrance reaches the room. The silver-haired guy, by the way, his name is Eric, is clearly pissed, while a subordinate assures him that they will follow his lead onwards. The fool who was kicked earlier suddenly notices the window breaking. The next moment, a zombie hand emerges, sending the guy into a panic. And just like that, he is bitten by the zombies. This startles the entire group. Trembling, one of them mutters the guy's name. At the same time, more zombies emerge. One begins to quiver in panic, not understanding why there are so many. Eric acts quickly, grabbing a steel pipe and killing the zombie instantly. It is obvious that the zombies were drawn by the fragrance. Shifting to Woo Cheong, coming to his senses, he defends himself. He is also shocked at the guy's increased strength. Regardless, he responds with a swift kick that sends the fool flying. Before he can even breathe, more zombies gather around him, making him realize that they all mutated by eating zombie meat. He knows it won't be easy to handle them, but he clenches his fist tightly, sending another one flying with a single strike. Suddenly, another appears behind him, making dealing with them even more of a hassle. Just as the zombie charges toward him, Eric instantly deals with it. Thankfully, this one wasn't mutated. Woo Cheong didn't expect this. However, Eric ignores his expression, relieved that he found him in time. He believes the guys are idiots for eating zombie meat without testing if it was edible in the first place. Since they are in a tricky situation, he suggests they team up. Woo Cheong doesn't fully trust him, but the situation leaves him no choice. Suddenly, both of them are stunned to hear Eric's name being screamed continuously. Looking from a distance, they realize that it's his subordinates, being chased by zombies, relieved and thinking he will deal with them. Woo Cheong almost facepalms at the sight. And the fact that Eric is acting all cute makes him even more furious, thinking the guy did everything on purpose. Nonetheless, they have to deal with the zombies. With that, each of them takes a stand, facing the zombies coming from their ends. Someone is using a shovel to make an escape. It turns out to be the pimp crew. They manage to evade the zombies just in time. Meanwhile, let's shift to Woo Cheong. The horde charges toward him, but he hurls a mutated zombie at them. However, one zombie manages to sink its teeth deep into his neck. This sight irritates him. Immediately, he grabs the zombie by the head, muttering complaints. He slams it to the side, expressing curses and frustration. In the midst of delivering a knee strike to the zombie, he suddenly freezes mid-action. He finds himself wrapped in someone's arms. Woo Cheong becomes speechless upon discovering it's a petrified Eric. Annoyed, Woo Cheong roars for him to let go, but the man refuses, fearing he might die if he does. Looking back at the scene, Eric reflects on the situation, concluding that humans can't possibly defeat zombies. Distracted, his subordinate urgently warns Eric to look out. Seeing that the approaching zombie is mutated, Eric instinctively tries to defend himself, but he is too slow. Woo Cheong, clutching the zombie's head, advises Eric to move aside. When Eric refuses, Woo Cheong responds by slamming the zombie so hard against the wall that he intends to create an opening to escape. Meanwhile, Eric is petrified with fear. But our boy is the least bit concerned. The wall shows signs of cracking before finally collapsing. Eric's subordinates, stunned by the scene, come to their senses and immediately follow the newly made opening. In the process of escaping, a zombie grabs one of them by the leg. Woo Cheong intervenes by crushing the zombie's hand. As he stares at the creature, a bold idea strikes him. He actually shovels the remaining gasoline into the zombie's mouth. Judging by its teeth, Woo Cheong can tell the zombie must have loved smoking when it was human. This also brings back memories of when he regularly urged his father to quit smoking. Nonetheless, he proceeds, insisting the zombie take its final cigarette. The zombie bursts into flames, along with the entire building. Some of the crew members show sorrowful expressions toward their lost comrades. Meanwhile, Woo Cheong silently wishes that the man no longer has to endure a painful life as a zombie. After some time, Woo Cheong calmly suggests that they get moving since the flames are growing stronger. However, Eric stops him from leaving alone. He points out that it would be meaningless even if Woo Cheong were to find both his sister and Xinglu. He drops a truth bomb, using the recent event as an example. If even a powerful zombie like him can't possibly protect them alone, so what chance do they have? Once again, he proposes that they work together. They don't need to trust each other to avoid owing favors in the future. Woo Cheong suddenly lets out a chuckle upon hearing this. Eric is confused by his reaction. Smiling, Woo Cheong remarks that the guy always acts tough at the worst times. Seeing Eric doesn't understand, Woo Cheong gently touches his stomach. Immediately, Eric's expression changes, like he just got boned from behind. No diddy. His subordinates look at him with concern. Woo Cheong effortlessly lifts him up since he can't walk. Now, Eric suggests that they move to the car. However, upon arrival, they find the vehicle engulfed in flames. A long silence stretches between them. Suddenly enraged, Eric slaps the foolish subordinate responsible. He remembers specifically telling him to park the car downhill. Fuming, he threatens to end the guy, while the others can only offer an apology. Unexpectedly, a voice speaks, successfully catching their attention. It's the doctor, smirking as he holds up a car key, suggesting they make a deal. However, seeing him in such a state, Eric reminds him of the fire. An awkward silence forms. Shifting his attitude, the doctor pleads for them to help him. The scene shifts to a parking lot. The doctor wipes sweat from his forehead, relieved that the vehicle still works. He hasn't driven it in a long time. The parking lot seems abandoned due to the apocalypse. He reasons that most of the car owners must be dead. Turning to the group, he announces that the car is ready, asking who will drive. Seeing this, Eric forces himself to stand despite the pain. Next, he stares at the fool intently. Turns out, the car is a tricycle. Eric immediately knocks the fool upside the head, furiously demanding if he plans to make them zombie food. His subordinates also express their anger at having been deceived. Meanwhile, Woo Cheong walks off. As the others exchange verbal blows like a heated Call of Duty lobby, their attention is suddenly drawn to a loud noise. They assume it's zombies. Instead, it's Woo Cheong. He suggests they save their energy. He then pulls a bus, over 500 times his weight, like it's nothing more than a piece of paper. Without another word, he instructs them to get inside. Inside the bus, everyone sits silently. Unable to bear the tense atmosphere, the doctor asks about Woo Cheong, but Eric's subordinates stiffen as if they were ordered not to speak. Meanwhile, the doctor is visibly excited. Thinking to himself, he notes that Woo Cheong is truly remarkable. Meanwhile, Woo Cheong thoughts drift, longing to find his sister and his crush. Seeing this, Eric speaks, noting that it's a long road ahead. Woo Cheong replies, promising to keep them safe. After all, they need to take advantage of each other in order not to owe any favors. Apparently, this was Eric's previous statement, so when Woo Cheong asks about their destination, Eric replies in a calculating tone, believing that every smart survivor will be in the suburbs. The next scene takes us to a survivor running from a zombie. Meanwhile, the female zombie is excited, thrilled at the prospect of eating him. Yes, eating him. Anyways, you know what I mean. The man is shocked, never expecting the zombie to run so fast. Approaching a building, he accidentally trips and falls with a loud thud. Just as the zombie lunges at him, preparing to devour him. The man shows a wicked grin. Apparently, this was all planned. Suddenly, a spike is hurled at great speed, ending the zombie instantly. What follows next is a horde, clearly not as fast as the female zombie. Seeing this, the man lights a match, tossing it onto the prepared trap. Not long after, the entire horde of zombies is engulfed in flames. At the same time, a black-haired man compliments him for a job well done, also mentioning that they now have meat for dinner. We are taken inside the building. Female zombie meat is on the menu. One guy prepares a bowl as he suggests they bring someone. In another room, people are seen. Suddenly, the door is kicked open violently, revealing a bunch of terrified individuals. Among them is Woo Cheong's little sister. As for how she survived, I guess we'll find out eventually. One of the men pulls her out as she pleads to be let go, ignoring her desperate cries and struggles. And just like that, zombie meat is stuffed into her mouth. The crew observes her anxiously after she eats the meat. Seeing no reaction after some time, the group shows a satisfied expression, concluding that the meat is safe to eat. The men devour the meat like it's a luxury, the last meal they'll ever have. Meanwhile, the girl curls up in one corner as these shameless men shift the topic to the women inside. In tears, she can only call for her brother. The scene opens with Woo Cheong effortlessly pulling the massive bus, as if it were a toy car. Everything is going smoothly until he suddenly hears a loud sound. Immediately alert, he scans the surroundings. Eric, noticing his expression, inquires about it. It's nothing, just a bloodthirsty horde of zombies craving flesh. Eric starts sweating at the sight of the enormous zombies closing in, but Woo Cheong remains calm as a cucumber, telling him to stay put. Despite Woo Cheong's reassurance, the men begin to panic. Woo Cheong decides to confront them. He slowly approaches one, only to be completely ignored, like your crush spotting you at work. Woo Cheong stares in confusion. Apparently, all the zombies are ignoring him, moving together as though they are traveling to a single destination. Eric's men exchange confused looks, unable to understand why the zombies are treating them like mere gusts of wind. But Eric seems to have an idea. He whispers to Woo Cheong, wondering if all zombies despise him. Even Woo Cheong himself doesn't know, standing speechless at the absurd remark. Suddenly, one of Eric's men points toward the distance. It becomes clear, the zombies are headed for the closest village. Worried, the doctor asks if they're really going to the village. Eric hesitates, contemplating the situation. Seeing his helpless expression, Woo Cheong takes the initiative. Grabbing the chains tightly, He realizes it's not too late to overtake the zombies. Without wasting time, they all prepare themselves. But in the next moment, they feel as if their souls are about to leave their bodies. Woo Cheong effortlessly runs with the bus as though it weighs nothing, clearing away any unfortunate zombie that stands in the way. Meanwhile, in the village, the villagers remain unaware of the approaching horde, too busy feasting on zombie meat. Not to mention, one of them is already in the process of mutating. However, the group is oblivious to the danger, dragging and fighting over zombie meat. One of them notices a figure approaching. He turns, excited, realizing it's the boss. He wastes no time offering him the most delicious part of the zombie. I'm curious to know what part that might be. Astonishingly, the man is actually Li Tianqi. Bro somehow managed to do a makeover during the apocalypse. Looking pleased, he basks in the flattery of a single compliment. But his joy quickly sours when Li Tianqi notices the zombies beyond the flames. Immediately, he slaps the fool, wondering if he was idiotic enough to leave the door open. He demands that he close it instantly. Yet, he also realizes something is off about the zombies. For some unknown reason, they're acting even more aggressive. He suspects that the fool is responsible. Meanwhile, the terrified man looks back at Li Tianqi. But Li Tianqi shoves a crossbow into his hands, ready to shoot. Obediently, he follows the death order. And just like that, a zombie manages to grab him by the hand. Before he can plead for help, the zombie sinks its teeth deep into his neck. Soon, chaos erupts as more zombies rush inside. The villagers finally realize what's happening. Screams and growls fill the air. Li Tianqi, annoyed, curses his lackey while trying to escape. Unfortunately, after devouring the fool, the zombies set their sights on Woo Cheong's little sister. The little one sobs, desperately calling for Woo Cheong. Thankfully, our boy arrives just in time. He makes a grand entrance by throwing the bus, though the people inside are definitely going to feel sick. This action draws the attention of the zombies. Meanwhile, Woo Cheong walks forward, the moon casting shadows before him, making his face unreadable to the zombies. But we know, he wears the expression of someone filled with sheer distaste, ready to wipe out anything and everything in his way. Meanwhile, the zombie let out a growl as it stared at Woo Cheong. In response, he grabbed the chain once again, adjusting his weight. He wielded the bus like a weapon, smashing one zombie instantly. He followed up by exerting more of his strength, spinning the bus like a whirlwind. This ultimate move successfully dealt with all the zombies. Looking at the aftermath, the people were stunned, too shocked to speak. Woo Cheong calmly approached them, reassuring them in the process. But one of them, smart enough to be cautious, pointed a flashlight straight at our boy. Seeing that he was a zombie, the group was terrified. Instantly, they made a beeline for their lives, which somehow contradicted Woo Cheong's intentions. On the other hand, Eric was fuming. They had almost been killed. For a moment, it was truly a miracle that they had survived all that. Meanwhile, Woo Cheong, the battered warrior, headed straight toward one guy struggling to get his foot free. Seeing our boy, the man panicked, insisting Woo Cheong step back. But Woo Cheong simply walked off calmly, ignoring the frightened fool who had most definitely crapped himself. Once inside, he spotted his little sister. Woo Cheong was relieved but still somewhat concerned. He reached out, only to be rejected. His little sister saw him as a monster. A wave of sorrow and despair hit him like truckun. Watching her sobbing uncontrollably, he tried to comfort her, only to freeze at her statement. She spoke of abandonment. Her words shook him mentally, and he unknowingly fell to his knees. For a moment, he was lost in a world of darkness. He failed to keep his promise. Regardless, he managed to squeeze out an apology. He smiled bitterly, knowing she must be terrified because he was now a zombie. Given the situation, he didn't know what to do. He felt like the most useless person in the world, recounting all the previous events up until now. Suddenly, his sister stared at him in awe. Her eyes widened instantly in surprise. She recognized Woo Cheong. Despite him being a zombie, she hesitated only for a moment before taking a firm step forward. Our boy was momentarily stunned that his sister recognized him. The little one immediately rushed in for a hug. It was obvious she had been through a lot ever since losing Wu Qiong. Moved by the moment, he wrapped his arms around her, a warm feeling spreading inside. This tender moment is interrupted by Eric. He apologizes, but there are pressing matters. It's weird that the men suddenly begin to itch and scratch themselves uncontrollably. However, Eric's subordinate points to one of them, the man with the stock foot. Now, his foot is completely twisted. Seeing this, Wu Qiong decides to check on him, but first, he hands his sister over to Eric's care. Even though she is worried, she reluctantly stays behind. Wu Qiong walks up to the trembling man, who is also mumbling words under his breath. Wu Qiong is stunned to see the man suddenly salivating out of nowhere. Then, without warning, the man fully mutates, roaring violently and expressing an insatiable hunger for meat. Eric immediately warns Wu Qiong. Instinctively, Wu Qiong smashes the man's head to the ground, prioritizing his sister's safety. He orders them to leave. Without saying much, Eric rallies his men and leads them inside the shelter. At the same time, those who ate the zombie meat begin transforming into mutated zombies. Wu Qiong struggles to keep the mutated man restrained. It seems these new mutants are far more troublesome to deal with than regular zombies. Suddenly, the creature breaks free, roaring at Wu Qiong. But Wu Qiong reacts swiftly, grabbing it by the head. He apologizes for what he must do next. Then, with a swift motion, he snaps the man's neck, granting him a quick escape from his monstrous fate. With that done, he turns to the rest of the mutants. There are far too many. He desperately needs to catch up with Eric and his sister. Among the mutating zombies, a bald man clutches his head, lamenting that it was impossible. They had all tasted the meat, including a little girl. Wu Qiong's expression darkens. The man was referring to his little sister. The man pleads for help. But it's obvious, he is beyond salvation. He suddenly mutates into a zombie. Wu Qiong becomes enraged, his eyes turning bloodshot. Forget about feeling sorry for them. These guys deserve hell. Immediately, he turns to the fool, now fully transformed. As the zombie charges toward Wu Qiong, he counters with a swift punch to its face. He follows up with a crushing elbow strike, while cursing furiously. Now, the real question remains, what will happen to the little girl? There is still hope, as she hasn't turned yet, or perhaps her mutation has only been delayed. Eric and his group finally reached shelter, but the big question remained, what was their next step? Turning to Eric for an answer, he admitted he had no idea. Before they could come up with a plan, a voice spoke from behind. Caught off guard, the figure acted and delivered a punch. The figure, a fierce-looking older man, roared in anger, demanding to know why Eric had returned. His subordinates quickly rushed to check on him. Still furious, the man was stopped by a woman who insisted he calm down. The whole room fell into confusion, watching the tense exchange unfold. The man, still fuming, accused Eric of deliberately leading zombies to the shelter, intending to kill them all. Eric smirked, calling the accusation ridiculous. Then came the shocking revelation. The man was actually his father. Eric was taken aback, surprised to see his dad still alive. Before things could progress further, the scene shifted outside. In one of the rooms, Li Tianxi kept his eyes on our boy, frustrated that he was too fast to get a good aim on. Just then, a lady interrupted his thoughts. Looking satisfied, she noted it's something Li Tianxi never expected. He was obviously confused. Meanwhile, Qing Lu, looking radiant as ever, noted that the fool had been eating zombies, so naturally, they'd return the favor. This enraged him. But Qing Lu noticed something strange. Suddenly, Li Tianxi burst out laughing. In the next moment, he grabbed Qing Lu by the neck, tightening his grip. He demanded to know why she was always against him. Now, getting a good feel of her bakery. Bro, that's not how you treat a girl. Even a simp knows that. Seeing her terrified expression, it became clear she had only one leg, though the reason remained a mystery. This made the fool wonder, should he break the other one too? But Qing Lu didn't beg for mercy. Instead, she insisted he just kill her and be done with it. Furious, he shoved her aside, complaining about her annoying attitude. Watching her cough, he switched gears instantly, now acting concerned, apologizing for scolding her. All he wanted was for her to obey. Bro even went as far as begging her not to be annoyed. If we didn't know about his twisted nature, we might have thought he was being sincere. But Qingla wasn't buying it. In a desperate move, she bit his finger, making him scream in pain. Seizing the opportunity, she wasted no time grabbing his crossbow. Li Tianqi grew anxious watching her. Contrary to his expectations, she didn't intend to harm him. Because this baddie would rather die than stay with trash like him. Enraged, Li Tianqi snatched the weapon from her, accidentally firing an arrow outside. Meanwhile, the guy was petrified by her rejection. Had he not pulled the weapon in time, she would have actually chosen to end herself rather than give him a shot. Seeing that he understood her intention, she found no need to explain. Not to mention, the arrow she fired was meant to force the zombie to spot them out. In other words, escape was impossible. Ignoring her, Li Tianqi bolted to the window, only to be stunned the next moment. Not only had Wu Qiong dealt with the zombies, but he had also caught the arrow. He stared at Li Tianqi with a murderous glare. The guy was stunned. It didn't take long to realize it was Wu Qiong because of his piercing gaze. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Without hesitation, he charged toward a puzzled Qinglu, scooping her up effortlessly. He ran out of the room, unable to believe it. He could have sworn he saw Wu Qiong being devoured by zombies. So how could he still be alive? Lost in thought, he didn't notice the zombie close by. At the same time, Wu Qiong charged forward at an incredible speed, making the fool almost wish he had worn brown pants. However, his attention snapped back to reality when he realized the zombie was so close, there was no time to react. Thankfully, Wu Qiong saved the fool. Just as his leg gave way and he fell to the ground, his kick was so powerful that he actually sent the zombie flying. Meanwhile, inside the room, Eric was beating the crap out of his old man. This was the apocalypse. Respecting elders had died along with society. The lady, seemingly his mother, pleaded for him to stop, even as his group stood frozen in shock. Regardless, she tried to calm Eric down, reminding him that the man was still his father. But Eric snapped, declaring that the guy didn't deserve to be called his father. His mother was stunned. Then, Eric suddenly pulled out a knife, radiating a murderous aura. He declared the reason he had risked his life to return. Simply put, he wanted to end the fool with his own hands. Before he could act, however, the room's door shattered from a massive impact. The flying zombie had arrived. Apparently, it took 3 business days to land. Eric was visibly pissed. His plan had been interrupted. Unfazed, Wu Qiong appeared. Realizing it was him, Eric sighed. It was obvious. They both had a habit of interfering in each other's business. Before we proceed with the story, we survey Qingla's thoughts to learn what happened and why she is one-legged. It started when our boy was being devoured by his parents. Watching this gruesome scene, they could only yell Wu Qiong's name and plea. On the other side, Li Tianqi ordered his lackey to break the window. Although hesitant, he obeyed. It seemed his plan to get rid of Wu Qiong would have worked fine if they had just escaped. But Wu Qiong's sister suddenly broke free, heading straight for her brother, just as a zombie burst out of nowhere, closing in on Xing, who stood stunned. Qingla acted swiftly. She managed to save Wu Qiong's little sister, but at the cost of her leg. Rather than feeling concerned about her injury, her gaze was more fixated on Wu Qiong. Meanwhile, Li Tianqi was momentarily shocked as the reality sank in, but he quickly snapped out of his thoughts. He borrowed his lackey's weapon as his guy dealt with the zombie for messing with Qingli's leg. Li Tianqi gritted his teeth upon discovering the wound was already infected by the virus. The only way to save her was to chop off her leg, and she let out an ear-piercing scream. With teary eyes, she didn't know why things had gone south. Her only wish was for Wu Qiong to wake up. With that done, we shift to the present. Once more, she is fixated on Wu Qiong, her heart heavy as she pleads for him to save her. Just then, a zombie lunges toward her. Wu Qiong's zombie instinct goes into overdrive. In a blur, he appears, blocking the zombie's path. Before she could even process what was happening, she saw the zombie biting hard into Wu Qiong, but he remained as chill as ice. Out of nowhere, a bat swings. Eric, irritated, kills the zombie. Meanwhile, the two just stare at each other as if the world has frozen. Qingla wishes to confirm our boy's identity. Well, he gives a reassuring answer, one that stuns her. It turns out he heard everything back then, especially when she wished for him to wake up. Feeling sorry, he notes that back then, he couldn't move his body. Obviously, she tears up, confirming it's her one and only. Moved to tears, she hugs him tightly, literally letting everything out. Still feeling sorry, he believes he is to blame for her suffering. But she never blamed him, or rather, she will never blame him. If that isn't the definition of love, I don't know what is. Meanwhile, Li Tianqi, the bastard, is finally coming to. The first thing he does is ask Wu Qiong how the hell he survived. Man, I really hope our boy runs hell on him like he deserves rather than being as merciful as Gilead Black.